And good evening. This is Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my cohort, David Kanyuk Jr. And as always, well, I shouldn't say that because we've had a fill-in by Maddie a couple of times, but producing this week is our friend Ryan. Say hello, Ryan, to...
Hello, I'm friend Ryan.
Say hello to the listeners. Good week, bad week?
Oh, it's been another week. Another week just full of incredible news going on in the world. So,
yeah, well, that's the way it is sometimes. Sometimes when it rains, it pours. Huh?
Well, it just feels like events are absolutely accelerating at a breakneck pace. I mean, it's really hard to keep up with absolutely everything that's going on.
Sure.
And kind of break that down into, a digestible nugget of anything.
Well, as I've talked to you on the phone, and I've said on air a number of times to people who've kind of listened to me on different radio formats, I view everything, all world events, sporting events, I view everything through a faith lens.
Mm-hmm.
How does it relate to the end of time?
Right, and that's how I view news stories as well, is through a prophetic lens. Now, I'm kind of interested about you viewing sports stories through a prophetic lens. So what happens if the Cubs actually do win a World Series? What does that mean prophetically?
That is, the Lord is coming. No. Now, Bradshaw would probably say that he might convert to Christianity.
Yeah, I was going to say
the Cubs
that's
win.
the one instance where he might.
Because I understand he's a very rabid Cubbies fan.
It's funny how he's that is his religion, but he can't accept
Sure.
the reality of a God.
Well, this is something that you can comment on if you want, or you don't have to. I know you're not a big NASCAR fan, and I guess this is more aimed at General Motors, government motors. So speak to it in that way if you feel so compelled.
All right.
But these are my thoughts, and as a NASCAR and Ford fan for almost 50 years, I have endured more than my share of seeing GM win championship after championship. And in the mid-'80s, when Ford was on the cutting edge of aerodynamics with the Taurus, T-Bird, and Aerostar van, which just happened to translate to speed on the racetrack, instead of NASCAR forcing GM to build cars to keep up with Ford on the track, they bent the rules and allowed obnoxious back glass to be placed on the squared-off windows of the Monte Carlos and smoothed-out headlight buckets to be put on the boxy Monte Carlos. This is all in perspective for me now that 30 million GM vehicles are under recall, and there is 62 class action lawsuits against the company here and in Canada. You see, NASCAR aided and abetted GM to build junk, killing and injuring many. And more than that, many of these death traps were targeted at young girls ages 18 to 25, particularly with the Cobalt. If my daughter had been killed or injured because an airbag did not deploy due to the fact that a car company did not want to spend an additional 57 cents to build a better ignition switch, no money, I mean no money, would shut me up. But what really pisses me off is the whole time they built this crap, they rubbed it in Ford's face that you can't win without a Chevy. Well, GM is recalling cars back as far as 1997, and GM knew of this ill-fated strategy as far back as 1989, according to Marianne Keller, who is a Detroit automobile insider, her book, Rude Awakening. Now, I know that Ford is the red-headed stepchild in NASCAR, but was selling your soul to the devil worth it? GM and NASCAR have locked themselves in a blood pact, and they both have blood on their hands. All companies from time to time build lemons. The Ford Contour and Mercury mistake, as they fondly call it, mistake, comes to mind. But this was a strategy at the highest levels of government motors. It just disgusts me that the free market isn't allowed in this country, because if it was, GM would have been out of business long ago. And then just let me finish up by saying, and of course, my friend and often bouting partner, Dave Despain, the host of Speed TV's Wind Tunnel, who I have went many on-air rounds with since the early 2000s, came off to me as one of GM's main apologists. You have any comment on any of that, or would you... How about the free market?
How much are those cobalts running?
Pardon?
How much are those cobalts running?
I don't know. They apparently don't make those anymore.
Oh, that's too bad.
But according to what I've read, there's about 1 million of them still on the road that still potentially have this ignition switch issue. And the recall notices that get sent out look a lot like junk mail.
Well, I think I had one as a rental once, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I liked that as a rental. You know, the time that I was driving the Cobalt, a lot better than the time that I drove, what was it? It was a Ford Fusion, I think.
Yeah,
I think it was a Ford Fusion. I don't know. I liked it a lot better than the Ford, so
well,
that's just me.
As I said, all car companies have been guilty of producing lemons on occasion. But Marianne Keller's book basically kind of implicates that GM was doing this at the highest levels of the company to just make their vendors put this ultimatum to them, like The Godfather, an offer they can't refuse. Cut your contract in half, or you won't have a contract. And so, if a switch, apparently the spring in the switch was a 57 cents they were saving. Now, 57 cents times, say, 1 million cars, you know, can add up to some money. But, you know, what's your daughter or son's life worth?
Well, it just goes to show you the total lack of ethics that's permeating every sector of business, every sector of government, and every sector of people's private lives these days. I mean, it's a sign of the times, really. Yeah.
Well, as I say, I tend to view things through a faith lens, and obviously it just says to me there's no standards anymore, there's no ethics, it's just whatever you can do to make a buck.
Well, that's why I drive Japanese.
Well, that is true. Japanese, particularly Toyota and Honda, do make some pretty good cars. Well, I'm going to get this kind of going here as pertaining to some of the topics we left off on last week. And we were talking a lot about borders and talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But I'll comment on something here that I'm sure you may have some thoughts on. I watched an episode of Free Speech TV of Democracy Now!, hosted by lesbian-looking whack job Amy Goodman. She was interviewing Glenn Greenwald of Ed Snowden fame. The conversation was on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and of course Greenwald and Goodman were accusing Israel of war crimes and accusing ABC liberal anchor Diane Sawyer of covering for Israel's crimes, then claiming that NBC pulled a regional expert off the story and inserted Richard Engel, an unknowledgeable sap, to espouse the talking point line. Well, let's be real straight here. ABC, NBC, and CBS aren't conservative outlets for the news. So again, if U.S. and Britain are going to set Israel back up in quote, unquote, the promised land in 1948, then stop moaning and groaning when they defend themselves from their godless Arab neighbors who are lobbing and funding the lobbing of missiles into Israel. Netanyahu said it right. Israel uses missiles to protect its citizens, and Hamas uses citizens to protect their missiles. But since Barry is a Muslim terrorist sympathizer, Netanyahu may as well ask Hitler for help. Greenwald accused Israel of attacking kids on a beach playing when Hamas started with the killing of 3 Jewish teens, and Israel is accused of aggression and constantly asked to show restraint. Well, if it was me, I would flatten Gaza, then stomp the roaches as they fled their nests. God forbid a liberal condemn Palestine, Islam, a Muslim, Mohammed, radical jihad, terrorism, Hamas, Hezbollah, or Arabs in general. So the liberal media isn't going to hide or cover for Israel. Conservatives who think Israel is part of Bible prophecy are their closest friends, but I'm neither. They do have a right to exist, even to reject the Lord.
I think what you're seeing here is you're seeing people who aren't necessarily out to defend Islam or the Palestinians. You're seeing people who are looking at the raw technical power and ability, the raw military ability of Israel, and they're looking at the numbers of Israelis killed versus the number of people who are killed in Palestine when Israel finally goes and smacks them back.
Right.
Israel is the state of Israel is just as guilty. They are the ones that helped form Hezbollah back in the day. Netanyahu has come out and endorsed ISIS. So they're just as guilty with fomenting and supporting their own enemies as the United States has been.
Well, would you go as far as to accuse Israel of war crimes?
In this instance, I haven't seen anything that would be construed as a war crime.
Well, I'm in agreement with you.
The point on this one is, and this is the point that I've been harping on for the past 2 weeks, why is Hamas suddenly launching an increased number of rockets into Israeli territory? What has precipitated this step up in activity for Hamas? That is the question that we really need to be asking. And yes, if they are shooting rockets over, yes, Israel has a response to defend themselves and to try and put a stop to it. But I would like to find out, I would like to dig a little deeper and find out the reasons for it.
Well, let me ask you this, and let's just sort through this and unpack this a little bit. Now, we may differentiate on what liberals used to be, are now, and what they should be. But taking into account just modern liberals, as you know them today, would you suggest or would you think that they seem to be apologists for Palestine?
They do seem to be apologists for Palestine. I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Okay.
And I think that reason is because they're looking at, just the raw numbers and the raw technical ability of Israel versus the, basic rock throwing techniques of the Palestinians who are herded into this, little sliver of land.
Sure.
They're also looking at it, they're not looking at it from a prophetic or biblical mindset. They're looking at it from a perspective of, oh, gee, here are those people who are living, in this land for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and then all of a sudden, by an act of the United Nations, they're forced out of their land, and now we have a state of Israel.
Well, again, let's take this one step farther. If the majority of the mainstream media self-identify as liberal leaning, would you think that ABC, NBC, or CBS would be water carrying for Israel?
I don't know. They might be, actually. I mean, there's always the old adage of, oh, hey, Jews run the media, So there might be some of that. There might be some of that kind of Zionist control mechanism in there.
We'll pick up on this after the break. This has been Frankly Speaking live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my co-host, David Kaniuk, and we will return after our break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray, we're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
See them here, see them there. You got bad credit, we don't care.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com. Visit emetroford.com today.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
And we're back with Frankly Speaking Live. This is your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my co-host, David Canuck. And let me put out the call numbers just in case anybody would like to call and join the conversation. That would be toll-free 855-244-0077 and 244-0077 locally here in the Des Moines area. You had a point you wanted to pick up on.
Well, we were talking about... you're kind of making the argument that it's just a liberal media problem where they're kind of carrying the water. You're questioning whether they're carrying the water for Israel or not. Couple of things. I just wanted to read a quote. Every time we do something, you tell me America will do this and will do that. I want to tell you something very clear. Don't worry about American pressure on Israel. We, the Jewish people, control America. And the Americans know it. That was said by Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon on October 3rd, 2001. The fact of the matter is the AIPAC lobby has incredible sway over just about every aspect of media and Congress and the Supreme Court. I mean, it's not just a liberal thing. I mean, they've got plenty of conservatives that are in their back pocket. Look at Lindsey Graham and the terrorists supporting John McCain are both in their back pocket. So I there is a very strong influence to paint them as much more sympathetic than maybe they actually are in the mainstream media.
I think we form a lot of our national or our foreign policy with Israel in mind. Mm-hmm. Because the people who believe that Israel is going to play a prophetic role at the end of time, I'm sure they're trying to do things to protect Israel as a nation. I don't necessarily think that we should kowtow our whole foreign policy to Israel, but when some of the neighbors have a sworn vendetta against Israel that they supposedly want to wipe Israel off the face of the map, and Israel has no right to exist. Even if, as I, who don't agree with Israel is going to be some big thing in end time prophecy, they still have a right to live. They still have
Israel is God's time clock as far as prophetic events go. I mean, everything that happens, I mean, that is like the center of the world.
I would only argue with you in this, as there is no longer a literal Babylon that John the Revelator
is
is
spiritual Babylon,
yes.
and I believe that's the United States.
And I believe this Israel that you think is going to be involved in the end time prophecy, I believe is going to be spiritual Israel, where there's neither Jew nor Greek nor Gentile nor circumcised or uncircumcised. We're all in essence a member of spiritual Israel. So I believe that's without getting into too much prophecy here right now in the middle of this debate, that would be my thought. But you want to think something different, and you want to comment?
I think that's an entire second show. The land of Israel itself plays a huge role in prophecy, and that's just
all right. Well, then we will save that for an entire show. But I'll kind of segue to this, I guess. Another wacko bird on Free Speech TV, Mike Papantonio, who hosts Ring of Fire Radio, interviews some schlub who says Americans are more likely to be killed by right-wing terrorists than by Muslims. Wow. And then says that Christians and other right-wing groups need the Patriot Act applied to them and all its ramifications from internment camps to reassignment. Again, wow. The hatred the left has for Christians knows no bounds. They refer to them as Christian jihadists. Besides the apostate papacy, which is a false harlot church, where in history is the mass homicide by Christ followers? Hitler was not a Christian. Attila the Hun and Genghis Khan weren't Christian. Napoleon wasn't. Nero certainly wasn't. But Muslims who follow, and I'll be polite here, a bozo that wasn't born to die for mankind's sins or resurrected to give life, the Holy Spirit is responsible for all, I repeat, all good in this world. But some just ain't got the good sense that God gave them to understand His mercy. So they think this knee-jerk good feeling and will they offer the world comes because they have evolved. Well, I hate to clue you in, but man left to his own devices will only devolve downward. So take your bleeding heart liberalism and put it somewhere the sunlight can't find.
Well, again, I hate to call him even a liberal. He's a progressive, fascist, totalitarian scumbag.
And you're speaking of Mike Papantonio,
whoever was on that show saying that.
Well, that was a Muslim mouthpiece sympathizer.
Well, what he's doing is, I think he's reading off of the Southern Poverty Law Center talking points, basically.
Well,
I mean, it sounds exactly like the material that they're putting out, which, of course, the Southern Poverty Law Center is funded by the Department of Homeland Security.
And I should try to Google this particular show and get the guest's name that was on it. That would be pertinent to the conversation.
But he is right on one thing. The Patriot Act was, and all of these things that have come afterwards, the whole police state mechanism has been set up against those who want to follow the Constitution and against Christians in this country. He's absolutely right on that point. Now, he's going a step further and saying it should be used. Well, that's the current attitude of this dictatorship, which is in the White House right now. And they are going and they are incrementally using that towards Christians right now.
The thing that just irritated me and got under my skin was the comment that, quote unquote, and I want to get this guest's name, but Americans are more likely to be killed by right-wing terrorists. meaning Christians, than by Muslims. And I'm going, where's the evidence for that?
Yeah, there is no evidence. There is evidence, though, statistically, that Americans are more likely to die from peanut butter allergies or bee stings. No, seriously, they're more likely to die from peanut butter allergies or bee stings than they are likely to die in a terrorist attack, whether carried out by Muslims or people who worship the flying spaghetti monster. So we've got this whole big apparatus, and we're conditioned to give up our freedoms because, some terrorist might come and kill us, when more people are likely to actually get struck by a lightning bolt than die in a terrorist attack.
Well, I understand your, and I won't call you a libertarian because you mentioned you don't like labels, but you tilt towards liberty.
Well,
which is safe to say. But let me ask you this. Let me just put this thought in your mind. All those things you say are nice in practice and they're nice on paper.
All these things I say are the truth.
I know, but let me finish this thought and then jump in. It all sounds good on paper, but until the moment that if you're claustrophobic and you're laying under tons of rubble and you're laying there for 5, 6, 7 days, don't know if you're going to be rescued, drinking your own urine to survive, you may die under that rubble, you may not.
And that's the risk that we take with liberty. We may die under that rubble. But you know what? I would rather live in liberty, I would rather die in liberty than live in tyranny any day of the week. And if you would give up any bit of freedom for any measure of safety, then you don't deserve either. And here's the report. The FBI pushed Muslims to plot terrorist attacks. A human rights report basically saying that most of these so-called homegrown Muslim terrorists that the FBI has busted over the years were in fact cooked up by the FBI. The FBI is funding this whole climate of fear, funding this whole idea that there are terrorists around every corner, continuing the militarization of the police departments, continuing the creation of the prison planet spy apparatus and everything. They're creating this absolute climate of fear. And what is the definition of somebody who tries to use fear to achieve a political end?
A fearmonger?
No, that is the definition of a terrorist.
Barack Obama?
That is the exactly. That is the definition of a terrorist. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that our hijacked United States government is a terrorist organization. And it is fair to say that Barack Obama is a terrorist. Well, his brother's actually the money man for the Muslim Brotherhood.
We'll try this one more time. The night I started this, we got cut off half a show. So we'll see what happens again. I was there's these people who you present to them that if you could stop 98% of abortions, and the only exception you would allow would be rape or incest, their principles will not let them accept that. Just as your principles won't let you accept any reduction in liberty. When pressed, they'll try to turn the tables on you by asking, well, what 2% of the infants are you willing to let die? I respond, well, right now 100% are dying. They're so principled, it doesn't faze them. Now, I admire and applaud their principles, but their principles in a quarter won't buy a cup of coffee. So, again, I know it's a dangerous precedent, but there has to be some balancing scale of protecting the homeland, because if the homeland isn't protected, we won't even have this argument.
This is all fascist Nazi rhetoric that's been put out there to try and get people to say what you're saying, that, oh, we need to give up something because the homeland, which is an absolute Nazi term, is under attack. And I reject that, when in fact the people who attacked those towers were people who were funded by the U.S. government.
But here's the problem. If we don't do something to secure our southern border, and we have somebody sneak a suit...
That's kind of a separate issue.
I know, but if we get someone sneaking a suitcase nuke in this country, or we get it sent over on a barge or a rail car or whatever, and they set off a nuke in this country, it's potentially all-out annihilation. Now, I know it won't be annihilation because the Lord would return for the elect's sake,
And I'm for security at our borders, and I'm for security at our shipping ports and things like that. I'm appalled by what's going on at the border right now. It's absolutely treasonous. But what I'm against is when you're telling me that I have to get my junk groped in order to get on an airplane. Meanwhile, illegal aliens are allowed to fly on airplanes whenever they want, just with a little, without any identification. And this broke like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Then I've got a problem with that.
Well, my response to you, though, is, as I said before, you know somebody's going to break in your house, or you're walking down the street and you happen to overhear a couple of guys saying, hey, we're hitting the greenhouse tonight, and your house is the only green one on the block. The question would be, are you going to go to bed that night, or are you going to be sitting in your chair with a shotgun waiting? And I'm simply saying I'm trying to advocate for some balance between protection of our country, national security, because Greenwald, in essence, said that Snowden took off with national security secrets that didn't involve the NSA. He's got those over in Russia. Greenwald himself said that on the program that was the debate with Alan Dershowitz, Michael Hayden, and
as far as the analogy of, hey, if you overhear two people who say they're going to hit the greenhouse and you're sitting up at night with a shotgun, yes, that's actionable intelligence, and you don't shoot them until they actually break into your house. When they break into your house, that is the act of committing a crime, and therefore you can stop them and use force at that point. But if you were to go out on the street and say, oh, I heard you're going to break into my house, and shoot them at that point, which is what this whole security apparatus is all about, then that's a crime. That's wrong.
Well, this has been Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my co-host, David Kanuke, and we'll return after the break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now, and then leave, and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
we're back with Frankly Speaking Live. I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my comrade, David Canute.
Final point
Did you need to make a point?
The final point that I wanted to make. What people have to understand is that Homeland Security, the whole term, the whole concept, the apparatus and everything, that was not set up as protecting America against a Muslim terror threat. They used the specter of Muslim terror and jihad in order to sell you on this whole concept, in order to sell you on endless war, imperialistic invasion, violation of the Constitution and civil rights in this country, the expansion of the police state, overwhelming NSA surveillance. They have used that specter of Islamic terror to sell that to you. But the whole intention all along was to set it up against right-wingers and Christians. And they've been incrementally turning the dial year by year, slowly turning the dial. And now we're at this point where people are saying on Free Speech Radio, oh yeah, well, we should use it against the Christians. And this is a very dangerous thing. This is why you should not accept the whole concept of Homeland Security. What happened on 9/11 was an act of terror. It was an act of terror that was perpetrated by factions within our government. Now, when I say government, I don't mean that your local mailman was in on it or anything. What I'm saying is that it's a compartmentalized faction within the government as a whole that carried this out. They wanted the image of those planes crashing into buildings and those towers falling in order to shock you into accepting all of this.
Well, as we talked a little bit last week off air out in the lobby, we kind of got into the discussion of the infiltration of organizations, whatever they may be, whether it's the Ku Klux Klan, whether it's the mafia, whatever it is. And sometimes when you play with dirty organizations, you end up getting dirty yourself. Now, much like the CIA wants to infiltrate something or whatever, they generally play in things that are gray and murky at best. So
there's a difference between playing in things that are gray and murky and then out funding those things.
So
in order to control them yourselves.
Keeping in mind, I'm going to make a statement here,
Sure.
but keeping in mind things like the Illuminati, the industrial military war complex, the Vanderbilts, et cetera, et cetera. I don't dispute these things may exist. Okay, I'm not advocating. I'm not a conspiracy buff per se. I don't ignore conspiracy. I don't acknowledge it. I'm saying there's some evidence that these things exist. But I was challenged once by a friend to why I was willing to buy a cheap T-shirt at Walmart, when the demand for those cheap goods put poor folk in peril that make them in sweatshops by greedy corporations out to get rich on the poor. And a collapse may have killed some folk making my shirt. I guess my friend was kind of offended when I said, quote, my concern wasn't the manner of their death, but whether or not they had accepted Christ. I guess my point is, okay, I'll concede to you there's greedy corporate types. I concede to you that corporations have undue influence on the media. But God says there's wars and rumors of wars, and this must come to pass. It has to. And I've mentioned on this show that when they start chanting worldwide peace, that's the time to get worried and take cover. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't deny Freemasonry. I don't deny Zionism. I don't deny the Illuminati. I don't deny the industrial military complex. But Jesus Christ, our Savior, is bigger than all those things. Now, I don't know about what that statue is. It may be the Illuminati. There's some statue in Georgia somewhere that's in many languages and it aims different directions.
Right, that's the Georgia Guidestones is what that is.
I watched a show on that, and it talks about the world's population needs to be down to a manageable amount.
Right, 500 million.
Okay. So the theory is, and I've seen some of these, what what's the bald-headed guy that?
Jesse Ventura.
No. The guy
Brad Metzler.
Yeah,
or Meltzer.
The Melcher, the guy that does the what do they call the program? I'm not that. It's not.
Yeah,
well,
I don't remember.
That's beside the point. I'll remember it. But some people are in fear that the Illuminati may have their way, and I think they overtly worry themselves sick about it. When ultimately the Bible tells me that the Lord has angels at the four corners of this earth holding back the winds of strife. Now, that includes all the plots, all the plans by these various government, anti-government groups. So my concern, much like I'm not worried about the T-shirt, my concern is, did the guy that died, did he have a chance to hear about the saving grace of Jesus Christ before he died? And, of course, my friend was kind of upset at that. So that's just my thoughts.
Well, the point is,
pick up on whatever you want to.
I was going to say, if you let the government continue with their assault on free speech and their assault on everything, then you're not going to have that right to tell people about Christ, and you're going to be thrown in a camp and you're going to be shot. And that's just the bottom line. And I know that's a really extreme statement, but you know what? That's what the Bible tells us is going to happen in the end times, is that you are going to have this one world government, which is set up by people who worship Lucifer. And you are going to have Christian persecution. And you're not going to just be able to sit around and do nothing. The Bible is about fighting against tyranny.
Okay, well, let me give you this quick definition, and you pick up on this or take it where it wants to go. A fanatic... The classic definition of a fanatic to me is someone who thinks everything is out of his control. Outside forces are moving him around like a chess piece on a chessboard. He has no control of his life. That's a fanatic. A secular humanist is someone who believes everything is contained within self. Good, all that's good in the world is good within you. All that's evil in the world is evil within you. And that you can with a certain amount of will exercised on a given topic, you can overcome anything. Now, the Christian is somewhere in the middle of those two positions between a fanatic and a secular humanist. A Christian believes that he has choices to make and that his hands and arms and legs and mouth can be used either for Satan or God. That he has a free will choice in it. So sometimes I feel some of these, in other words, I think we need to fight for our rights. I think we need to go to the ballot box. I think we need to be educated when we vote for our politicians. But on the other hand, I also feel that sometimes worrying yourself sick about the plots of men and the fanatics who are out there that think everything is under, some conspiracy control, I think is too much undue worry and stress.
Well, if you can look at the news and then deny that there is a push for a one world government and deny that there is a push for persecution, then
no, I
guess
agree.
God bless you. But here's the thing: these mega churches, for years and years and years, have indoctrinated Christians into believing that they're powerless and believing, oh, it's okay, just don't worry about it. God will take care of it. God empowers you to take care of it. It's not about just letting something happen and just leave it to God. You do have faith in God, but you have faith that God empowers you to change things. And that's the problem with society, is that people don't believe that they have the power to stand up and change things.
But do you?
And we do.
Do you agree? Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and that which is to God, God.
My life and my liberty are not Caesar's, and I will never render my life and my liberty.
No, but what I'm saying is that Caesar has certain rules in society. All societies have rules about...
Caesar has certain rules in this society, and I guess by that measure, we should take the mark of the beast.
No, what I'm saying is...
render unto Caesar.
No, what I'm saying is that all societies, the Egyptian society, when God took Israel out of bondage, Egypt had rules on stealing and lying and cheating. What was new to the Israelites was the commandments that dealt with their personal relationship with God, their Savior. So what I'm advocating is Christ didn't come to this world to fight about taxation, monetary policy, and get in a fight with Caesar. What he overthrew was the money changing in the temple, that they had turned something free into a money-making adventure.
This isn't about taxation and any of that. This is about your very life.
Yeah,
this is about your very life.
But what I'm getting to, if Caesar says stop at this stoplight, do I have the right to run through it?
No, that's not the point.
What's the borderline between anarchy and liberty? And
I'm not advocating anarchy. I
know, but liberty taken too far can be a god in and of itself. Liberty can almost be the god that one worships. And I'm simply saying that Christ said, "Render unto Caesar which is Caesar's." You don't have to go out and revolt and be killed and slaughtered by Caesar. Obey his rules, but when it comes a point where it crosses your conscience and your personal God, that's when you can make a stand for God. But he was saying, as long as you're under Caesar's roof, in essence, your protection comes from Caesar.
No, your protection comes from God, because if you're taking that attitude, then you're placing Caesar above God. To say that your protection comes from Caesar is placing Caesar above God.
But what I'm getting at is the Jews wouldn't have owed money. They wouldn't have owed nothing to Caesar had they not fell into apostasy from God. And they was owing things to Caesar because of their apostasy from Jesus Christ, or from God. So they fell under the bondage of Caesar.
Right, and we're falling under the bondage of tyranny right now in this country.
Well, again, I would just make the case, and maybe I'm naive, but I would just make the case that we got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, and I think that there's got to be a balancing act between our sovereignty, our borders, protecting our national security, and
you want to read the story? Here's the FBI. We're the ones that are funding
all
of these people
pick up on
who
that
are
when we
arrested
get
as terrorists.
I'll let you pick up on that when we get back. This has been Frankly Speaking, live with your host Frank Holzhauser and my comrade David Knuke. We shall return after the break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
See them here, see them there. You got bad credit? We don't care.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com. Visit emetroford.com today.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, what's wrong? Logan wants Let's Rock Elmo for his birthday, but since Steve lost his job, I don't think we can afford it. What did you do for money last year when you and John were struggling to make ends meet?
My secret? I went to Me and Mommy to Be. We sold all of Megan and Ryan's clothes and toys there. They give back the highest percentage on their items in the area, and it was so easy.
Megan's clothes? She's 15.
Yes, they can sign newborn through trendy teens. We're not struggling now, but I'm gonna keep saving and making money at Me and Mommy to Be.
And we're back with Frankly Speaking Live. I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my co-host and ornery compadre this week, David Canuck.
Oh, I'm so mean.
Let's have a two out of 3 falls wrestling match with no time limit.
You got
garbage cans and garbage lids.
Good old-fashioned hardcore match, man.
Well, we'll leave that prior conversation for another week, and we've got a few minutes left here, so we want to get into the illegal well, I shouldn't say illegal immigration, but the immigration that's going on from Central America, where they're turning themselves into the border agents. And you were predicting or saying that there would be some kids that was put in Iowa, and something kind of come true, and you wanted to tout about it this week. So.
I don't want to tout about it. I honestly hate being right. I absolutely
tell
hate
people
it.
what you were right about.
Last week on this show, we were talking about the whole border treason that's going on. And I had come across a couple of job ads last week, one for the Waukee Community School District. The other one was for the West Des Moines Community School District. One was the Waukee School District was looking for Spanish interpreters to act as a liaison between Spanish-speaking families, Spanish-speaking kids, and teachers. The other one was actually looking for Spanish-speaking teachers for kindergartners in West Des Moines. These are two different areas of the Des Moines area that are not really in flux with a lot of need for heavy interpretation. You don't have a lot of kindergartners that aren't able to speak English. If they're born in West Des Moines, they're probably to parents who have of Spanish descent that have been here a little while and can at least speak the lingo. So I said on this program last week that my gut told me that they're doing this in advance of illegals coming into this state. And after that show, a couple days later, during the week, during this past week, it did break that illegals were dumped in Iowa despite the governor's wishes. The Des Moines Register reported that at least 139 what they call unaccompanied migrant children were sent to Iowa so far this year after being detained by Border Patrol agents. But state officials say that they have had no idea until just this week that the undocumented minors were living here. Branstad said that he was not aware of any young people from Central America being sent to Iowa after illegally crossing the U.S. border from Mexico. Brandstad's communications director, Jimmy Centers, said that state officials received confirmation this week about the children arriving in Iowa, but he added that no other details were provided by federal officials. So again, we have, just like what we had in Nebraska, where illegals were dumped in that state without any approval from the governor whatsoever. We have that same thing happening here in Iowa.
Well, there was some governors complaining, I think.
That was the Nebraska governor.
Well, him and others were complaining that potentially these children were being sent to their states without the governor's knowledge.
Yep, and that's what's happened here.
So this week, what did you think of the Rick Perry, the Texas governor, sending the Texas National Guard down to the border to help reinforce the border?
It's the right move in theory. However, the Texas National Guard is being instructed to only take an observational role at the border. Breitbart reported this week that most of the 1,000 National Guard troops headed to the Texas-Mexico border will take up observational positions and detain people only if they interfere with their mission. So that would mean people who are protesting the treason that's going on at the border. So they're not in there to stop people going in from over the border. They're there just to stop people from interfering with letting those people come over the border. So the headline of the Texas National Guard being sent there is just there to placate people. They're there to oversee the influx and act as placation for any actual patriots who would actually go down and protest this treason that's going on. And the end game in all of this, one of the end games, is to dial up the influx of people to such a degree that we have to get the UN at the border overseeing everything. We have to actually get UN troops on the ground. That is what the next step is going to be. And Dave Hodges actually reported this week that that there are whistleblowers saying that there are UN observers already down there at the border. He's got a couple of agents that said that the UN is already here and that they have seen clear evidence that they are calling the shots on the border. We will see UN troops calling the shots on the border on American soil if we do not stop this.
Well, let me toss this out for you. I know quite a few people in the automobile industry. I've transported a lot of cars for them over the years. And so I kind of know this is a fact of someone who kind of witnessed this event or was pretty close to this event. But supposedly and I think this is kind of a famous incident, and there were some other incidents like it, but Mexican federales, or military, was giving cover fire for drug cartels who were smuggling drugs back and forth across the border, was giving cover fire against border agents chasing a black SUV that got caught in the middle of the river and stalled out, and they were giving cover fire for these cartels to get back. It begs a question to me, again, you being a person that always would like to side on the side of liberty, and I would guess you're not fond of militarization of our border, but at what point and what do we have to do in this country to make sure we know who's coming back and forth across our borders? Because ultimately, if we said, hey, amnesty today for everybody that's here.
I don't want to say amnesty
for
everybody.
No, I know that. Yeah. I know that. But even if we concede to that, the border's so porous that people are pouring back and forth. How do you know when they're coming in, when they're leaving? And what's 20 million amnesty today might end up being 40 million. So the number one thing is to stop the border cold. And the current methods aren't working. So what do we do?
They're not working because they're designed to not work, because ICE agents are being barred from doing their job. There were a couple that talked to the National Review saying that they're being told to stand down. This is an orchestrated event. This isn't just a bunch of people deciding to come over one day. This is an orchestrated event. They're being encouraged. They're being funded. They're being provided for to travel up here. They want to dissolve the borders. What we need is for Rick Perry to actually tell the National Guard, you stop these people. We need him under the 10th Amendment to kick the feds out of these border regions. And under the control of the governor, you stop them. You tell any of these governors that have illegals that are being housed in their state that they're not going to get to go to families or anything like that. They're detained, and then they're shipped back to Mexico. If Mexico won't take them back, sorry, but you're going to sit in a detention facility.
I have a quick question
and that will stop these people. Once they get word that, hey, we're not getting a free ride, that's going to stop what's coming over the border.
A quick question for you before we run out of time, because we got about a minute and a half left. Strobe Talbot, who was an advisor to Hillary Clinton and may end up being an advisor again, advocates that he is not a citizen of the United States, he's a citizen of the world, and advocates for a world basically with no borders. What do you feel do you feel that there was a trigger or a mechanism? Because like I said on last week's show, this Bush law, who was to help the kids who were being, in the sex trade, it was to help them have an avenue to be refugee and political asylum or sex asylum status. What's the trigger mechanism? Why are they all coming now? Quickly in about 45 seconds.
That question, I don't know the answer what the trigger mechanism is. I know that there were ads out on the bizops.gov website to have people to help accompany these minors once they got into the country. So they were those were out there since January. So they've been planning for this event for a long time, and this event's going to continue to get worse.
Okay, well, again, we'll be back next week, and we'll likely be picking up on this topic because it seems to not be going away because Obama doesn't want to have a photo op at the border. So we will return next week with Frankly Speaking Live. Until then, this has been your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my comrade, co-host, compadre, David Canute.
As we fade out, watch Putin this weekend. The Ukrainian president, his resignation is a big signal something's about to go down.